Hello, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another video. If you're new here, my name's Jemima, and today I'm going to be talking about the biggest money mistakes that I made while traveling, because let's be real, I've made a lot. I like to think that I'm pretty frugal and good at sticking to a budget, but there's definitely been a few times, maybe even more than a few times, when I've been oh, I just wasted a lot of money when I didn't really need to. So I figure I'm just going to impart my wisdom and share with you guys the mistakes that I've made, so then in the future you won't make them, and then hopefully by me repeating them I will also not make the same mistakes again. I did this video about how I went to Europe. I was there for about 9-10 months and I spent an average of about $40 a day, which is pretty good. However, the whole time I was there I definitely made a lot of mistakes that wasted a lot of money. So yeah, the absolute first thing is making sure that you choose the right travel money card. So for ages I was just using the one that was connected to my bank, a Commonwealth Bank travel money card, because it was really easy to use, instant transfers, and seemed like it was a pretty good deal. So I used that for maybe a year, and then when I was traveling through Europe, I was there for a while, so I opened an account with Revolut. I realized that the currency exchange on there was so much better than on my CommBank card. CommBank was really easy because it was linked to my Australian account. However, I was getting a terrible rate. So I was okay, well, that's the end of CommBank for me. And then the next trip was 2 years later because of COVID. But my next big trip that I did, I went to Thailand, and I really took the time to research what was going to be the best card for me. And I found that Wise, I think it used to be called TransferWise and now it's just called Wise, that's the best in terms of getting the best rates. They do have fees, but once I did the calculations, it was better to pay the fees than it was to not pay fees and get a shitty rate. So say for example, I would put 1,000 Australian dollars into Thai baht, and I ended up saving, honestly, probably $100 for every 1,000 or 2,000 Australian dollars that I would transfer. So definitely worth getting Wise, and maybe it's different for different people depending on where you live, blah 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 blah, but from everything that I've researched, Wise is definitely the way to go in terms of bang for your buck. I did get sucked into using my Qantas travel money card for a while because you get really good points on it, and I was oh, frequent flyer points, but the exchange rates are so shit that you're better off buying flights rather than the money that you lose through that. So number one tip is don't get sucked into a bad travel money card. It's always worth doing the research. Okay, my next big mistake is really relying on ATMs. So when I got the Wise card, they said, okay, there's no international ATM fees. Perfect. I was that's great, that's easy. However, I didn't really think about the fact that there's still the local ATM fee. So the local ATM is still going to be charging you. And the ATMs in Thailand were charging us $10, $15 every time we wanted to get cash out, which was really annoying. So after making that expensive mistake, I now am very cautious about taking out a lot of money at once. Obviously I don't want to be carrying around heaps of money, but at the same time, it's really expensive to keep going to the ATM over and over again. So for example, when I went to New Caledonia earlier this year, we were only there for a week. So I just got out the money in Australia, in Australian dollars, went to an exchange place, exchanged the money, and then just had cash for the whole trip, so we didn't have to go to the ATM once. When I was in Bali, I was there for a month, so it was a bit longer. I definitely didn't want to be walking around with heaps and heaps of cash. So I kind of strategically did it so that I would only have to get one ATM withdrawal. Although if you're going to a place where you can use card a lot, for example, I was just in the US and you can use card everywhere there. So I didn't even get any money out at all. I just paid for everything on my card, and Wise cards have no international fees, which is perfect. All right, the next big financial mistake that I have made is not planning ahead. So I do love being spontaneous, don't get me wrong. I love a good spontaneous trip, and you can sort of be oh, I feel like doing this today, I'm gonna do it. Oh, I met this cool person and they're going here, I'm gonna go with them, However, it's a real fine balancing act. Planning far ahead is important in some regards. I remember once, this was a really long time ago, but I was in Paris for my 21st birthday, and we needed to get back to London, and we were oh, we'll just get the train, it's easy. The train tickets were 20 euros or something, but then we didn't book it, and then the week before we went to pay for it, and it was 200 euros. So yeah, sometimes it's really worth booking ahead. I love being spontaneous while I'm traveling. I love being able to sort of go with the flow, meet new people, do whatever, but at the same time, you do sort of have to plan ahead. It's like quite a delicate balance. One time I was in Kosovo. I went to this cool city because it was like near a mountain that I wanted to hike. And there's only one hostel in the whole city, and I was like, oh, it's fine, like no one really goes here, so I'll just like rock up and get a room. Turns out the weekend that I was there was some like film festival on, so it was really busy. Walked all the way to this hostel only to find out they didn't have a room, so then I had to like walk back into town, find somewhere else to stay. It was more expensive, and I didn't get to meet anyone because I wasn't like in a hostel. So sometimes it is worth planning ahead. Like even if you think like, oh, it'll be fine, like maybe you just check and make sure there isn't like a random film festival on. Also, especially if you're traveling in the summer, in the peak time, you really want to be booking ahead for like the big things that you kind of know you're going to be doing, whether it's, you know, a ferry to the Greek islands or I don't know, a tour of the catacombs in Paris, something that you think is gonna like sell out or get more expensive as time goes on. It's worth planning ahead for those specific things. Speaking of planning ahead, I think it's really important to have a plan, even if it's a rough plan, of food and eating out. Like the one thing I'm always gonna spend money on while I'm traveling is food. Like I'm not the kind of person who can just go to a new place and then go to the supermarket and get a sandwich and be happy. Like no, I love food. It's one of the main reasons that I travel, to try new foods. So yeah, usually I have like a list of things that I want to try, places I want to eat, etc, etc. But all the times that I'm like, oh whatever, I'll just be spontaneous and see what I can find, that's when you get caught short and you end up having to spend heaps of money on something you didn't even really want, or you end up accidentally just having to go to McDonald's because you can't find anything else, and that is the worst feeling. So I always like to have like a few things saved on Google Maps so that yes, I can go out and sort of wander around and see what I find, but if I don't find anything, at least I know I've got something saved as like a backup plan, and you don't end up spending way too much money on food that you didn't even want. So I am like very reliant on Google Maps. I'm a huge planner. I always have like a huge doc before I go somewhere of all the places I want to see, all the things I want to do, everywhere I want to eat, etc, etc. I have made a video before about like how to find the best places and how to find the cool stuff when you're traveling, so check that out if you are interested. Another thing that I thought would be good for saving money but ended up costing me more was staying in accommodation like far out of the city. For example, I went to Prague and I didn't want to stay in any of the like cool hostels in the city because they were like a bit more expensive. I think they were like 40 euros a night and I was kind of used to paying 20 euros. So I stayed in this like shitty hostel that was pretty far out of the city center, and I was like, this is great, I'm saving money. However, I had to like get public transport every time I wanted to go somewhere, which costs money. I had to get an Uber from the train station when I arrived because it was in the middle of nowhere, and I ended up like just like missing out on really exploring Prague because I would be like, well, I don't really want to be out late at night and then have to like trek back to this shitty hostel, like, you know. That was the kind of thing that I wish that I had spent the money to stay in the city, and then I would have saved the money by not being in the middle of nowhere. Okay, this one is kind of hard to get around, but a big mistake that a lot of people make is traveling in peak time. Like obviously you're gonna wanna have a European summer. Like if you're gonna go to Europe, you're gonna wanna go during summer. You're gonna wanna be there in like July, August, because that's just like the best time to be there. But if you can, it's better to go in shoulder season, so like May, September, I guess. Things are so much cheaper. Okay, I just realized I didn't really like make my point very well. I'm not saying that during the high season you should just like stay home and do nothing. What I'm trying to say is like maybe during those months avoid the really busy places like the Greek islands, Amalfi Coast, like south of France. Like those places are going to be really pricey in the high season but a bit cheaper in the off season and the shoulder season. But in those months, in the high season, maybe use that time to explore places that are a little bit cheaper and like off the beaten path, like Poland, Slovakia, Budapest, just like places that aren't the typical Instagram spots. You know what I mean? I know what I mean. You know what I mean. I ended up going to Athens and Greece like right in the peak time because my friends were there, and I was like, well, I want to go and see my friends, but it just cost me so much more than it would have if I had gone in one of the shoulder seasons. Same with Croatia. I went to Croatia because I wanted to go sailing, and obviously I'm gonna have to go sailing in summer, which was stunning and beautiful and lovely. But then when I was like traveling around Croatia, everything else was super pricey. Like again, if you're just going to Europe for a month and you want to go during the summer, go for it, you know, go have your European summer. But if you're traveling sort of longer term or you're more flexible, it's definitely worth exploring shoulder season travel, or even like off season. I think a lot of places are really beautiful in the off season. Like they're not quite as good, they don't have quite the same vibe, but it's a different vibe. like exploring a city in the off season is kind of, you get a real vibe of the actual city, not just what the tourists are like. I don't know, food for thought. Okay, one of the most expensive things that I did when I'm traveling around Europe was carrying a big bag that had to be checked luggage. Okay, sure, when you fly like Sydney to London, you don't have to pay for your baggage, but then all those cheap flights that are around Europe, you have to pay like an extra like 50 to 100 euros just to check your bag. I really wish that I hadn't taken a big bag. So since then, I have invested in an amazing little backpack. I took it to Bali for a month, I took it to Mexico for a month, I took it to Thailand for like 4 months. It just fits everything in it perfectly, and it saves so much money on excess baggage fees. I've definitely like perfected the art of fitting everything in. Packing cubes are my best friend. I made this video about how I pack everything into a carry-on size bag if you want to watch. Yes, it is not ideal for winter. That's the thing. I was in Europe for summer and winter, so I had like a million different like outfit choices for the weather. So yeah, maybe if you're traveling in winter, it's not so easy, but it's definitely good for like traveling to warmer countries in the warmer months. Just quickly, using mobile data is the biggest financial mistake ever. Even if you're like, oh, it's only like $10 a day. Even if you're going for a week, that's still 70 bucks. You can get a local SIM card basically anywhere you go for probably $20. It's an instant money saver. Like sure, it maybe will take like 5-10 minutes out of your day the first day you get there, but never use mobile data. Oh, it's just like easy, but such a waste of money. And finally, I find that a lot of my accidental money spending goes on booking flights because I am not as organized as I would like to be. I kind of tend to leave things to the last minute, which is not ideal when you're booking flights. Some people think that like booking flights last minute is a good idea because it's cheaper, but it's only a good idea if you don't care where you're going, you don't care what day you're going, and you don't care what time of day you leave. If you actually have a day that you want to leave and a place that you want to go to, book in advance when you're booking flights. I think everyone already knows, always go on incognito mode when you are booking, because then the cookies don't remember like where you wanted to go, blah, 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 something tech, data, something. Being flexible is obviously ideal because then, you know, say if you're like, oh, I want to go to Thailand in July, then you can sort of go on and you can say, well, actually, if I go on the 1st, it'll cost me like $500 less than if I go on like the 17th. So maybe I'll just like be a bit more flexible and shift my timeline around that. There is an app called Hopper. I've actually never used this, so maybe I should be taking my own advice here, but I've heard that this app called Hopper is really good for knowing like when to book. So for example, I'm going to America in March to see Taylor Swift and I haven't booked my flights yet. If I book my flights now, they're gonna cost like $2,100, but if I go on Hopper, it might say, oh hey, wait until like middle of December, the flights usually will go down by that point. I have spoken about it before, but I do love the everywhere feature on Skyscanner. You can just put in a date, put in your start location and say everywhere, and it will tell you the cheapest places that you can fly to on that day, which is ideal again if you're like super flexible. It's not for everybody, but it's a good way to not spend heaps of money on flights and also explore new places. Okie dokie, this kind of brings me to the end of my video. I hope you've enjoyed listening to all my stupid mistakes. Hopefully it's made you a bit more prepared, or at least makes you feel better because you've maybe made these mistakes too, so you're not alone. If you have any other suggestions for like stupid money mistakes, please leave them in the comments below. I want to hear it. If you're planning a trip, I would definitely suggest checking out my little like how to plan a cool trip and how to plan a cool trip on a budget videos. Those are going to be really helpful for you. Okay, I'm going to leave you here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. You are a real one. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Farewell.